Alright, I'm about to say something that might destroy my credibility as a film critic in some of your eyes. I do not like James Cameron's Avatar.
I'll kill you!
Now, before you all crucify me for saying something so blasphemous, let me explain myself. For those of you that somehow haven't seen Avatar, this film was directed by James Cameron and stars Sam Worthington and Zoe Saldana, and tells the story of a group of scientists and marines that discover a mineral on a faraway planet, and the only way to retrieve it is to step into the bodies of one of the natives on the planet through the use of avatars. What follows is almost 3 hours of every Save the Rainforest and White Person Learns the Way of the Indigenous Tribes movie that you have ever seen. When this came out back in 2009, it was revolutionary for two things. One, it had motion capture CGI that didn't look like a horrifying nightmare, and two, it made 3D a legitimate enhancement of the film rather than a cheap gimmick. Aside from that, I truly don't understand how this became the highest grossing movie of all time. Before I go into bashing this movie really hard, let me talk about what I did like. Obviously, the effects in 3D are the best part of this movie. Over a decade later and everything still looks incredible, and the 3D truly does make this worth the experience. While there's certainly a lot of 3D films since this came out that were very good, there was always a lot that resorted to using it as a cheap gimmick. Hopefully, with the sequel, studios will start to put more effort into 3D movies again. Performance-wise, I don't think anyone did a bad job. Each character is well acted and everyone is trying their best with the material they're given. And that's where my praise for this stops. While everything on the technical side from its effects, score, cinematography, sound are all top-notch, none of it matters if there isn't an interesting story or characters behind it. And my god, there is not an interesting story or any interesting characters to speak of. Every character in this is either a caricature of someone you've seen in a dozen other films, or they're really nothing. Jake Sully is every boring, uninteresting main white guy in an action movie that you've ever seen. It's clear he was supposed to be the catalyst for the audience to experience this world through his eyes, but we should still like and understand who this guy is. I don't know what kind of personality he has. He barely shows emotion in situations when he should, and every reaction he has is either whoa or angry white man noises. If you're going to have your lead be uninteresting, then you have to offset that by having someone who is interesting. It seems like that's what Cameron was aiming to do with Neytiri, played by Zoe Saldana. The problem with that is, we don't spend enough time with her to form a connection or really get to know her. In films like Mad Max Fury Road, it can be argued that Furiosa is the lead as it's her mission she's going on, and she's a far more interesting character than Max is. Here, the film should have become split between the two of them, but instead we stay focused on generic white man number 77, and the film greatly suffers for it. Every other character, like I've said, is either a caricature or just bland and forgettable. There's not a single character I cared about, and none I grew attached to, while, for some reason, there are people on Twitter that believe you don't need to have memorable characters in order to have a good movie. Frankly, I think that's fucking stupid. Without characters that are interesting or memorable, how are you supposed to become attached to the story or film you're being told? We watch movies not just because we want to see stories and worlds we've never seen, but because we want to see characters that we can either see ourselves in, characters we can fall in love with, or characters we can grow to hate. If all films had generic, bland, and boring characters like this, I think people would start to wonder why movies have been around for so long. Then, there's the story. If you've seen films like Ferngully or Pocahontas, you know exactly where this is going. Now, again, having a story that's simple isn't bad, but if you're going to do that, you need to have something of interest to offset the simpleness of the story, whether that be interesting characters, which this film doesn't have, or interesting themes, also absent from this film. This film just spews out the same message of save the rainforest, big corporations are bad, indigenous people are people too. All fine messages, but the film doesn't do anything interesting or different than the dozens of other films that have had those kinds of messages. Cameron clearly spent more of his time building this world than he did on the script, story, or themes. And if we're being honest, even that he doesn't do that well. Sure, the world looks beautiful and different from a lot of other sci-fi films, but we never learn much about it. When we do learn stuff about the Na'vi's connection to the world or how they interact with some animals, it's cool and interesting, but there's not enough of it. Jake in the film is supposed to learn the ways of the Na'vi, but it's just done in a few quick montages and we don't gain that much info from it. If Cameron really wanted us to become invested in this world, then we need to actually spend time in it. Learn more about how the world works, the kinds of creatures on it, learn more about the Na'vi and their ways, other tribes and how they differ. Actually get to know the Na'vi as characters. The pieces are all there, but Cameron just didn't seem to care about actually fleshing the world out. Also, can I just say, the magic mineral that they go to on the planet to find is called unobtainium. I will repeat that. It is called unobtainium. This movie was nominated for Best Picture. Guys, I'm sorry. I really don't think Avatar is that good. The film is just a copy of other films of its type that we've seen before, and we were all duped into thinking it was something amazing and groundbreaking because of the effects in 3D. When you take the glasses off, both literally and metaphorically, you're left with a shallow film that believes it's saying a lot when in actuality it's just regurgitating what others have said before. If you love this film, then more power to you, but I'd rather have a film that gives me well-written characters, actually fleshes out the world, a story with actual intrigue and themes, than more of this. Hopefully, Cameron fixes these problems with the sequels, but we'll have to wait to find out. I'm going to give Avatar a 5 out of 10.